Do you want to admit the people in the lobby, Timothy? Timothy?
I think he's struggling with his net. I'll allow people in the lobby.
Okay.
Let me just admit everyone in.
Thanks, Baluku.
You're welcome. No worries at all. All right. I think we're 5 minutes now into the call, and we have quite a number of people. I think up to 27 people. If you don't mind, allow me to kickstart the conversation today. As we wait for people to come in, we'll admit them as we go. But I'm pretty certain that our panelists are here. All right, let me get into it. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in from. Thank you so much for making the time, every one of you. My name is Baluku Dona, Senior Programs Officer with AfriLabs, responsible on project implementation across multiple verticals, including gender, including environmental resilience, and quite very, very honored to have everyone in the room, from our partners. Thank you, Jennifer, for making it, to our panelists that Jennifer will definitely introduce. As we get into this, I do acknowledge that there's definitely critical interlinkages between water, energy, and food systems, which we call the WEF Nexus or WEF Nexus. And as we get in this conversation today, we do realize that this WEF Nexus together form the foundation of sustainable development. However, these interconnected systems, sometimes they're especially essential for life and prosperity, and definitely don't operate in isolation. So some social realities that shape access, equity, and agency are definitely backed into this conversation. So at the heart of it is a powerful and overlooked dimension, which is gender. How do women and men experience water, energy, and food nexus differently? How can we design policies, technologies, and systems that are inclusive, that are just, and gender responsive? These are not just ethical conversations. They are practical necessities for achieving resilience and sustainable outcomes. Having said that, the One Planet Network, with all our partners, supported by multiple UN agencies, has been at the forefront of promoting integrated systematic and approaches to sustainability. Through this Nexus, or the WEF Nexus initiative, we seek to strengthen cooperation, break down sectorial silos, and mainstream gender across decision-making processes. So today's session will feature insights from panelists, experts, practitioners, thought leaders, partners, implementers who are championing gender equity within climate action, resource governance, and sustainable systems. We will explore challenges, showcase promising practices, and then together identify concrete steps we can take to ensure that no one is left behind. So as we get into this, thank you all for joining this conversation. I look forward to an impactful dialogue. And without boring you with so many words, I will hand it over to Jennifer to introduce our panelists and take it over. Thank you, everyone. Over to Jennifer.
Thanks very much, Baluku, for the introduction. Also from me, hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. We're very happy to have you here. I just wanted to extend a very warm welcome that Baluku already gave you. So welcome to today's webinar, which is Gender, the WEF Nexus, the role of women in managing water, energy, and food resources in Africa. So it's a real pleasure to be a moderator for what promises to be a very insightful and timely discussion today. So Baluku already spoke a little bit about the importance of the WEF Nexus in the African context. but also in general, it's important for economic growth and climate resilience. But I just wanted to highlight before we start speaking more to our panelists, to highlight the role of women that the women play in this nexus. So despite their very important role that women play, they are the ones that manage these resources most of the time. They are still too often undervalued. So women are the stewards of water in many households, the backbone of smallholder agriculture, and the primary users and managers of domestic energy. So today we want to also highlight that many of their contributions are often not as valued as they should be, maybe, because women continue to face limited access to land, to credit, to decision-making spaces, and also to opportunities for leadership. So today we're here not only to highlight these challenges, but to hear from those who are actively working to overcome them across sectors, across geographies, and with an eye towards long-term systemic change. So we're joined by an exceptional panel of thought leaders and practitioners today. We have Joyce de Lagat, a gender and climate expert with NORCAP IGAP, who has been instrumental in embedding gender across climate policies frameworks in East Africa, drawing on her experience in UNDP, UNEP, and GIZ. Our next panelist is Rhoda Malemba Mwashigadi, who is the executive director of Mazido International, who has led inclusive water governance and climate-smart agriculture initiatives in some of Kenya's most resource-stressed regions, empowering women and marginalized groups through the WEF Nexus. And from Mali, we are joined by Jules Tanguy Donatien Alain, who is a communications expert at Femmes et Développement, who is advancing gender-centered storytelling and program visibility throughout West Africa, using strategic communications as a tool for inclusion and change. And finally, we're delighted to have Margie Brandt, founder of the Vicari Institute, with over 3 decades of experience across more than 40 countries. Margie is a leading voice in systems thinking and inclusive development. So as you can see, together, our panelists today bring an extraordinary breadth of insight and experience, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussion ahead. So also, again, thank you to the audience for your time and for joining us today, whether you're tuning in from a university, a community organization, a developmental agency, or simply as someone who is interested in equity and sustainability. We are very happy to have you part of the conversation, and we're looking forward to your questions later in the Q&A. So let's begin, and I will hand over the floor to our panelists, who will shortly introduce their work in their own words before we move to the panel discussion. So I would hand over the floor or the microphone to Joyce, if that's okay with you.
Yes, thank you very much, Jennifer, for the introduction, and for Timothy for introducing this panel discussion. As you've mentioned, my name is Joyce de Lagat. I work with the IGAD Climate Predictions and Applications Center as a gender and climate expert. And so my work is mainstreaming gender into climate services, ensuring that climate information provided is timely, accurate, and also are inclusive to mainly the marginalized groups and those who would often be forgotten. So, for instance, we are trying to design communication models that are inclusive to ensure that this information is accessed. And in addition to that, we are working on enabling or empowering women and persons living with disabilities on understanding this information and how to incorporate climate information into their work, and also in ensuring that it transforms their livelihoods. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joyce. I'm very interesting your work. Also, I think that you're working with also people with disabilities. I think also adds another dimension to the issue. So I'm looking forward to what kind of perspective you're going to bring to the discussion later. I will just move to the next panelist for a short introduction, which is Jules, if you would not mind introducing yourself to the audience.
Okay. Good morning. Sorry for my English because I'm from a French-speaking country, so English is my second language. You're doing really well, don't worry. Okay. So my name is Jules Donatien Alain. I work for Femmes et Développement, or Women and Development in English. or FEDE, as if we shorten it. FEDE is an NGO, a woman-led and woman-focused NGO who works with survivors from violent extremism and climate change to help them and strengthen them and be able to change their lives, to reintegrate society, since they have been impacted by so many events in their life. And we work in many different sectors, such as protection, WASH, food security, gender inclusion, and how can I say? Sorry. Let me end this real quick. Okay. As I said, we work in governments in the sector of agriculture and education, vocational training, socioeconomic integration, conflict analysis, peace, security, and all that. My work there is mainly, as you said, communication, to build stories and share it with donors and be able to convey what the people we're working with want to convey to the people helping them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Drew. I think the aspect also of storytelling is also something that will come out, I think, also when it comes to capacity building. So I think you can add a really interesting perspective there as well. So thank you so much for introducing yourself and the work of Pharma Development. I will now hand over to Margie, if that's okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Margie Brand. I'm calling in from Cape Town in South Africa. I'm with the Vakara Institute. We're a small nonprofit organization based out of the US and working in different parts of the world. And a large part of our focus is how to work through businesses, the private sector, and other market actors, which might be public or private sector, in how to change incentives and look at how we can impact the broader systems change. So a large part of what we do is around market systems development, and also around work that is looking at understanding what are the types of deeper behaviors and the deeper areas that need to be influenced, I suppose, and facilitated in different ways in market systems and other systems. And I'll be talking more about that later when our panel starts. So Timothy, we don't need to share that yet, but when I speak next, we can talk a little bit more about the specifics of some of the frameworks, as an example that you're seeing on the screen right now, and how we've implemented those in different contexts around the world. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you. Sorry for mispronouncing. It's Margie. It's not Margie. Sorry. Okay, Margie, I've noted. Thank you so much. I think it would be really interesting to see the work of your organization also, that you work quite internationally, I've seen. So I think this will be also interesting to see the different contexts, which of course are sometimes very localized. So I think it would be interesting to also, as a best practices exchange, maybe to understand better your work in that sense as well. Thank you so much. Then I will hand over to our last panelist to introduce herself, which is Rhoda, if you don't mind coming forward. Hi, Rhoda.
Hi, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Very, very humbled and honored to be here. My name is Rhoda Mwashigadi. I am calling in from Voi in Taita Taveta County of Kenya on the East African coast. I'm excited to be here. I am the executive director of a small local NGO. It is called Mazido, MAZIDO. We stand for Management of Arid Zones Initiatives Development Options. So we have a huge passion for capacity building our communities, for them to make an effective change using the meager resources that they have. So we are heavily involved in capacity building of the communities, and as relates to the gender and WEF Nexus. I was hoping that Timothy Mugume could share my presentation so that I am then able to tell you in a brief about what we do at Mazido in the context of WEF, and also thank you very much. I hope you can all see the presentation in the context of WEF, and also with regards to a representation of the things we have done in the last 12 months that have a relationship with what we do. So as we have said, we are quite been here quite some. We were established in 1993 and registered in 95. We build resilient and thriving communities. We have a mission on empowerment by innovation and sustainability. We try our best to make sure that the communities can use locally available technology to solve problems that they encounter in their farms. Show me next slide, Tim. Okay. We, in the area of agriculture, we've been training over 100 farmers, women and youth, on soil and water conservation techniques. This is mainly as relates to especially specialized technologies like semicircle beds and all other interventions in saving water. We've also provided education on integrated pest management in Taita Taveta County, most especially in the Taveta sub-county, using locally available products. We have also been sensitizing communities on delegated management models of sustainability, especially as relates to water resource users associations, and also the use of delegated models like water users associations that are registered with the Water Resource Authority, so that they have the due legal authority to distribute water. So we've also been promoting effective management of community water projects for long-term use. This includes making sure that the work that relates to use of expensive fuel in the form of generators and gas can be replaced more especially with the easily and freely available solar that we have in this region. Show me next. So basically, we are doing a circular loop in the context of making sure much less energy is used in the in the generation of water for productive use. Thank you very much. I believe we'll share more as we go. Asante sana.
Thank you so much, Rhoda. Very interesting to see your local projects and also how much you have extended, and also that Mazido exists this long, and all the different works that you have been doing locally. We have been visiting with 3 o'clock Rhoda recently, so we have seen some firsthand the work they have been doing, and it's very nice as well where they're located. So I'm looking forward to kind of facilitate a dialogue as well with our other panelists. So I'm sure you have a lot of things you can exchange on. So I would just go. I think we kind of breezed through the introductions, I realized, which is also good because this means we have more time to discuss some of the issues we're all concerned with. And maybe just also for our audience, maybe we can start off by talking a little about why is it important to center women in conversations about the management of water, energy, and food systems, based on your own experiences. So maybe we can start off with Margie. I think you wanted to also talk a bit about the frameworks, and then we can just have an open discussion from your perspectives, what you think, why is it so important to center women in these conversations?
Well, I wanted to, I found it useful to think about this through a framework. And Timothy, maybe you can share the presentation again, and I'm just going to talk you through just a few basic pieces of that framework. And so, Timothy, while you're getting that on the screen, what we do is to try and think through what are the various contexts that could change possibly in market systems that could drive changes overall for women in different contexts. And as Jennifer said in the beginning, all of this is highly contextual to regions that people are working in, and to the local economy, the local private sector, and what people can do. But if you go to the next slide, Timothy, what we can see here is a example of the framework that we're speaking about. And what we talk about is that there are different levers of change to influence gender norms in market systems. Some are slow, those are in the dark blue circle. There's almost a slow level of change, and some are faster. Those quick little small blue ones. And so in other words, there's certain things in a society or a context that are going to change more slowly, and there are different things that are going to create that slower change. But when they change, they cause a very big change in other parts of the system. There are other things that can change more quickly, and they may not cause as big a change, but we need all of those to be happening. So if we look at the light blue gears there, we see that there are several fast-moving levers, and one of those is gender segmented end consumer. And what that's talking about is when you've got women that are emerging customer segments, and so we want to really leverage them as a customer segment and have businesses be more interested in what do they need to change for women to be more of a potential end consumer. They might change things such as the research. You might be empowering businesses to do better research, to be able to actually understand that customer segment better. Maybe their branding and marketing needs to change so that women are more inclined to purchase things. They understand what is for them. We've worked, for example, with agricultural input suppliers who would take packaging and have more women oriented designs on it and show women using the inputs in different ways. Maybe the distribution strategy for input firms, or if people are doing water products or whatever it might be, can be geared to places where women are, and messaging around that women are focused on, or support services around those areas. The next part of that, another example of those fast moving variables, is around women that are segmented, also a gender segmented supply chain that adds brand value. And this is looking when people want to buy something because it's kind of socially branded in some way. It's made by women, or it's related to women ownership, which again relates to working with private sector on how to brand and market, how to look at supply chain management so they can make sure that women are indeed feeding into the supply chain in certain ways, and that adds value. Another quick example in that visual is where you've got a gender segmented supply chain, but it's focused around functional performance. And what that means is that there are often myths or stereotypes around the way that women can engage in certain functions and the way that they can, play a role, whether it's as farmers or transporters or aggregators. And in some roles, women can actually outperform men, whether it's managerial, technical, operational, and sometimes they can perform even more efficiently. So it's about understanding and working with private sector and other market actors to research and to again do supply chain management and look at what support services are needed in different areas. And lastly, there's disruptive technologies. And Rhoda spoke a little bit about this in terms of introducing water-saving technologies, and also your integrated pest management using local available resources in the Kenyan context. But looking at how do you leverage certain emerging technologies to start shifting functions that are often conducted by women already to then become added value functions, and to increase women for that reason more in specific market spaces. So sorry, we were actually supposed to stay on the initial slide. Timothy, if you can go back and just stay on that visual.
I think it's like it's like an automatic thing with with Google
Timothy,
sometimes.
The second slide, sorry, I didn't realize you were going so quickly through them all. But when Timothy gets there, I wanted to mention also that there's the disruptive technologies piece is a really critical one, because again, you're looking at just the next slide, Timothy. No, wait, let's keep, no, can we go back?
Maybe Timothy, get out of the full view and just show the slides like this. I think there's a problem with the presentation mode. I think it skips through it. I think it was with Rhoda's presentation as well. But if you just show the slide like maybe zoomed out, I don't know, maybe it stops doing this frantic going back and forth.
And while Timothy's getting it, I'll carry on, because I think that what we're talking about, and if you can imagine that visual, there's the slow moving variables. And what I've spoken about is kind of the areas that are linked to what is already happening in a market that you can then leverage in a particular way, such as with the technologies, or where you can start influencing the market because you're seeing women are starting to emerge as end consumers, and so honing in on that and having more focus around that area, or even having more focus around the supply chains and the brand values. And what you also would have seen is, and we can distribute this. If you send put maybe your emails, addresses, or contacts in the chat, and I'll put my email address there as well, because feel free to reach out to me, and I can actually provide you with a copy of some of these frameworks for those people that are interested. But there's slower moving variables, and some of those slow moving variables are important for all of us to understand. There's social movements that can impact slow moving variables. There's also the disruptive labor migration patterns. I mean, we know in so many of our contexts that there is labor that is migrating, and what's happening is that often there are men that are migrating either to cities or out of countries, and you're leaving women in a space that is forcing them to take on new roles. How do we understand where that's happening, and how do we leverage and support that space? So there are various areas that we can look at, and there are quite a lot of examples that I can draw on that have taken place in different countries around each of those. But let me stop there, and I can always circle back to them. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much. So I think it's a really great high ground analysis of how change can happen in a very detailed manner, so that there are so moving parts and so on. And I think it's also I think from your perspective, the market is the one that shifts, right? Can you maybe I think why are women so important in the wheels you've shown, for example? Why is it important to get women more involved in them?
Yeah, so important, such an important question. And really the fundamental piece is that where markets are operating effectively, there are, and I'm presuming you can, where markets are operating effectively, you need to have as many of the population involved in those markets as possible to be able to have the expertise, to be able to solve problems, to be able to understand how to use things in different ways, to be able to get together in a community when different shocks or stresses happen, that you've got more people involved in that community to be able to share ideas, to share innovations, to share research, and to deal with issues. And so for markets to perform better overall, you have to have women playing a more key role. But if markets are structured in a way that by nature are not focused and recognizing the value that women give, either in the supply chains or as end consumers or in added value functions, then by nature, no matter what we do in terms of training women more empowering, if the system they're moving into hasn't shifted, then their opportunity is not going to shift. It's putting them in the same place. It's empowering them and training them and giving capacity, but putting them in the same system that always existed. We believe we have to start shifting that system so there's more value and more ability for women to be able to participate, so that the market indeed can function better and can become more resilient in the longer term.
Thank you. I think just from that, I would like to jump to Rhoda. I think as maybe also might align with what you have been experiencing in your work, which is more grassroots focused and more localized. If you would like to maybe give you some ideas from your experiences, how you've been experiencing the involvement of women in these initiatives, and maybe what has shifted also for them economically being involved. If you could talk to this.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. I think in that context, there are three things that I would like to share based on the experiences we have garnered. The first one is, when they have to work in formally registered institutions, they do need capacity building in changing or improving those constitutions to be gender sensitive in a highly patriarchal society or arrangement. So you find, for instance, what I am calling the water users associations or the water resource associations in the grassroots, they tend to have just standard constitutions that do not recognize that based on the traditional gender roles, the women or one of the genders steps back, and in the process, the reason why the user association exists shifts towards one single gender. So once they have, like expertise in reviewing and editing their formation documents to be gender sensitive, then that helps them a lot. That's number one. Number two, just like what Maggie mentioned also about the technologies. For instance, when we are speaking about interventions on food and agriculture at the grassroots, we do realize that quite a number of them will have smartphones, for example. So if they are taught how to download recognized and approved applications that can help them, for instance, identify the pests or pest management systems that are commensurate with the crops and environment they work on, they tend to be more excited and the solutions are much faster. So we have some apps that we have used with them that are approved by the local agricultural authority to help them, for instance, plant ticks, which helps them which is freely available both on Android, helps them identify some pests and also to be able to know what organic pesticides to utilize to deal with this. So one is on the governance, the other one is on practical solutions in the farms, which often are women-led to assist them in identifying challenges and coming up with the solutions on the spot. I hope this is helpful in terms of it being very practical. Asante.
Thank you. I think it was really interesting. I think also you spoke a bit about like this more of a policy or governance shift that is also needed so that the inclusion can be a bit more from the ground, so people have like less barriers that they face. I think this is also a really, really interesting aspect. And I think I wanted to pose this question a bit to our policy expert, Joyce. So I was wondering from your perspective, so what are some of the main structural or systemic barriers that prevent women from accessing land, water, or energy equitably?
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much, Jennifer. And just a bit to comment on the previous conversation in terms of policy and the participation of women in policy formulation and development processes. So, so there's an increasing need to include women in policy making forums. And in most cases, for instance, I can give an example of my work generally. So within the IGAD Climate Predictions and Application Center, we have a forum that is called the Greater Horn of Africa Outlook Forum that looks into the seasons, the upcoming seasons, and coming up with advisories that the policymakers would then take up to ensure that they prepare early for the upcoming season. And we've been advocating for the participation of women in such, of women and also the gender experts from the member states that we serve. But then if the sector experts are not aware or are not appreciating the need for inclusion in such forums, then it becomes very difficult for the gender experts to influence change within such discussions. So even as we try to build the capacity of women, we also need to ensure that we build the capacity of the actual policymakers so that they are in a position to listen to them constructively and also take in the inputs that come from women and also the vulnerable groups, including, for instance, youth and also persons living with disability. Yeah, so moving to your questions in regards to the structural barriers in accessing land and water and also like the food systems. So within our region, we know that we are living in a patriarchal, in most of our societies are patriarchal, and issues to do with culture influence how women have access to land. And when you look at the policies, some policies have actually advocated for land inheritance by women, but then because this is not harmonized with the cultures, then it becomes difficult among the societies. So how can the policy interventions be able to intervene in terms of leveraging societal changes, and also change in terms of the inequalities that are setting back women? And also the issue of that I've just mentioned, the issue of participation. So how can we build the capacity of the vulnerable groups to meaningfully participate? So bringing them into the room for policy making is different from actually allowing them to participate meaningfully. So before their participation, or before participation in such forums, there are initiatives that prepares them to understand the subject matter, and also to give them the confidence to be able to speak in rooms that have policy makers. And how are we able to design the participatory framework, participatory sessions to allow women, considering the cultural aspects that where they are coming from. For instance, some are not in a position to speak in a room where men are. So are we allowing or providing room for them to have separate focus group discussions? And if not, how can we advocate for them to speak meaningfully? So when it comes to energy and energy issues, so, and also food and water, we know that women and girls are the ones who are solely responsible with the collection of these resources. And with climate change also influencing the scarcity, so it becomes difficult for them to access, and makes them even more vulnerable, and also even more time poor, because they will have to use more time to access these resources. So their involvement, the policy, and also ensuring that we include the considerations for these vulnerable groups is very important. And not only like bringing this gender issue as an add-on to the policies, but from scratch, are we able to identify these barriers and address the barriers from the root causes, and not only addressing them from our face value? So I think this is something that we need to understand from a deeper sense, rather than like rather than being reactive. So yeah, so I think that's what I can submit for now.
Thank you so much. This was very interesting. Also quite a global approach, and also I think the importance of understanding the local context and kind of going from there, going from the bottom up, so to say. I think it's also a very valuable approach, not just like enforcing policies, but understanding where the issue is coming from, and then adapting the policies respectively. I think is a very, very important approach that we will also see across the panelists. I think we have you've all been speaking a little bit in this direction of understanding the local context and understanding how things can be achieved by collaborating, and also really bottom up, sort of going from there. I also had a question for Jules. So knowing that you mainly work on the communication side in Femmes Développement, I wanted to also ask, in your view, what kind of role does storytelling play in reaching out to people, but also maybe in changing people's minds, and kind of going back to this maybe less gender inclusive thoughts or belief systems that are already in place? So what is the role of storytelling and like communicating in your view when it comes to capacity building?
Thank you. I'll talk about communication in integrating the women in decision-making areas and decision-making places. In the context of one of our projects, we were working in with women for how do you say cohesion sociale?
You can just say social cohesion. I think it's the same in English.
Okay. So for social cohesion, we needed to be able to put women into decision making, and to put survivors displaced people who came into the new into Mopti. They moved from Bajangara, a very affected place, to Mopti to find some peace and a new life. And we needed to be able to integrate them into decision-making mechanisms so that their how can I say, their needs might be taken into account. And for that, we worked with, we started working with religious leaders, because we're in a really highly religious and traditional country. And we thought that if we work with leaders to shape a story, to shape, a story that can affect people and make them think more about those people who came as people who need them, people who needs have to be taken into account for the society to go forward, for peace to be built into the community. It will be a great way to bridge the gap between people. So going forward, we didn't really think it will work because, as you know, traditional leaders are very, 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 very difficult to to convince. But to our surprise, out of 42 villages where we went, 41 of them accepted the women into the mechanism. That was mostly due to the stories we shared with the religious leaders and other community leaders, but also because of the how can I say? Because of capacity strengthening that we gave those women. We work with them on mediation, on communication, on conflict resolution.
Mm-hmm.
We strengthen them. We give them arguments. We give them power. We give them a weight in the society by giving them some opportunities, some economical opportunities. We made them like pillars in the society before we went to them and tried to convince them of letting the women be into the mechanism. And that approach allowed us to have, as you can see, a great success rate. Since from 42 villages, we were able to integrate them into 41 of them. And I think that's the way to go. We have to shape a story, to use our local and traditional leaders, to use our history, to use everything that happened in the past, strong women that were doing things from eons ago, how they managed to make the kingdom into a great place, how they influenced wars, how they influenced this and that. And so via this approach, we're able to craft something so beautiful that it convinced them. And since they can see the woman talk and act and give meaningful advice and meaningful sorry, they can okay, they can see the women are not just here. We didn't just put women into the mechanism just because you want to put women into the mechanism, but we put people who are doing something, who are working, who are changing things, who have a weight in the society, who are feeding people, who are transforming the economy. And by doing that, we were able to achieve our goals. And I think this is one of the ways we can go about the question.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really nice example that you shared with us. I think not only, like, I mean, when we think about that gender inequality might be caused by traditional thinking, I think it's nice that in your storytelling, you actually took something traditional, something that happened in the past in your country, and to show that women historically always have been important, and to take this and then turn this into a story of kind of promoting the role that women can play in the society instead of like completely rejecting tradition, I think is a very interesting approach to approaching these issues actually. And I think like crafting the story based on something that comes from the past is also a very nice thing, I think, especially in the African context, to show African, or in your case Malian history, as something that can be inspirational to use for promoting gender equality is actually quite a nice example, I find.
Because, you know, a lot of people think that it's something that came from the West, including women into systems, but they forget that in their story, it was part of the story.
Yeah.
So reminding them of that is a really effective way of going about it.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very empowering story as well, also to value your own traditions. I think it's a very nice way that you found there. So thank you so much for all of you for your different perspectives, but I wanted to bring the conversation a bit more closer together, also maybe to give you a chance to the panelists to interchange and interact a bit more with each other. So I'm just posing a question to the panel as a whole. So I think you all spoke about like different aspects of my question, but I would like to like looking ahead. What kind of support, financial, technical, institutional, do you think is most needed to advance women's roles in managing the WEF Nexus? So please feel free to jump in if you have something to say, and please also feel free to comment on each other's perspectives and have a dialogue.
I could start with a thought. I think part of what we're finding is that we can often demonstrate evidence on the value that women bring, either in supply chains, but even, for example, in the end as an end customer. So in other words, if you have agricultural retail stores that are distributing to more and more rural areas and in ways that can get to sort of last mile customers, or if you've got water services or products that need to get to people in sort of more rural areas, maybe that were not a focus, and especially women, or even in urban areas, there's often an assumption that women are not holding money, they're not making buying decisions, and that maybe they're not interested in certain products or would understand certain things. And what we found is that doing test marketing initiatives or market research initiatives with different, especially, for example, businesses that we often are working with, they start seeing that actually there's a huge value for women as an end customer. And when they start seeing the value, but in terms of building up loyal customer base, that's what often drives them to start thinking about how do we change our promotion and our advertising and the kind of products that are needed for women and the kind of ways that they can access them. So doing some of those test cases, I think, are really useful to demonstrate in a very real way how women can add value. And the same with the added value technologies, such as Rhoda mentioned, is being able to show that women are able to use technologies in a certain way and can really add value in so many parts of supply chains. And I think that sort of evidence-based decision-making that you're helping market actors see to be able to change their investment in women as buyers or suppliers is a really critical part. And I really valued what Jules was saying regarding the influence that traditional leaders can have as well by taking up recognizing the value of women and then becoming an influencing point across our networks, but helping those traditional leaders, like Jules is saying, through the storytelling and giving some of that sort of evidence around what, so that they can use that as part of what their influencing capability is.
Thank you. Someone wants to comment directly on this or has their own thoughts?
Yes, I can come in next. So I would like to speak into the context of food systems, and also considering that women contribute a higher percentage in terms of food production within our region. So I think one of the support that women can be given is in terms of access to resources, access to financial resources, and also considering that they are limited in terms of the lack of maybe access to land, which in most cases could be used as a collateral to access loans. So how can the loans be made like easily accessible by women so that they can be able to boost their productivity? And also in terms of, for instance, when you are incorporating climate information and production. So in most cases, resources are needed for you to be able to take action. And without the resources, then it means that maybe the early warning information would not really help you to improve or to maximize or mitigate the impacts. So I think in terms of maybe financial institutions having like flexible loans for women, it would be very instrumental in improving productivity by women.
I think you both had like quite interesting perspectives. I think one, women as consumers, to make like to show also their how to say, like financial capacity, but on the other hand also helping women who are producers to continue on that path. So helping them with financial incentives so that they can also like produce their own wealth in a way, I think is a very interesting thing. I think it's interesting that you both had like the consumer and the producer perspective in your comments. Is there anyone else who wants to comment on that question? So what do you think, what kind of financial, technical, or institutional support maybe even is most needed to advance women's roles, if you have something to say? Go ahead, Rhoda. Jump in. I think I saw your hand.
Yes. I think.
Yeah, Rhoda, I think you can say. You were talking.
Thank you. Okay, so in our work, in the water food energy food nexus, we noticed that in the water sector, there is a national association of women in water and sanitation. They call themselves WEWAS, WIWAS. So what they do is they try and mentor either young water engineers or women from the grassroots institutions that require exposure on being more vocal to the national and international level. Sometimes they look even for sponsors so that the ladies can be more confident. So you find there are a lot of women, sometimes women leaders who are deep in the grassroots, but never have had exposure either on the national or regional level. So you're asking about probably capacity building. So in the WEF Nexus, probably we could consider either an association or a group of professionals or an institution like IGAD or any other that could have a little budgetary allocation to actually handpick some of these women from the grassroots through a recognized criteria. Sometimes just pull them out from the bundles and bring them to an urban setup or bring them to a meeting that brings in a lot of women like them so that they become more confident or realize it is something very important that they're working on. Because when they're back there, they tend to feel that their voice is not important, that probably there isn't much they can do or disregard themselves like that. So I think this is something we could pursue. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. That's very interesting. So more like the institution that really like takes women and like tells them like you're important, your voice is important, to have like this institutional support that backs them, right? This is what you aligned, what you were saying too, right? I think otherwise you. Sorry, I see there's hands from the audience, but we will go to a Q&A later, specifically with the audience, if that's okay. If you have a question right now, if you can write it in the chat and then we'll address it later, if that's okay. Yes, Jude, please go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with everything the others said. I wanted to add to that, like, from us, what we do, we worked with multiple partners to build multifunctional centers, because we think that even if we give women the tools to be able to create and do some business from themselves, a lot of them don't know how to manage a business. Even if you teach them, it's pretty hard to have something that lasts long. So we went with another approach where we built in right now we have 5 different ones in 5 different regions in Mali, where we do, it's like it's semi-industries. Instead of giving small equipments to everybody, we set up a manufacturer, if I can say that, with a lot of heavy machinery, which women can use, and there they have somebody to accompany them into how to work everything. They have computers. They are teach how to use and how to manage more efficiently the businesses, because it's not just about financial or capacity building. You sometimes have to accompany, since we work a lot with rural women who didn't go to school, who don't really have a lot of baggage. They need to be accompanied more if you want them to succeed. And for what we can see up to now, since we started this initiative, is really, really interesting, because a lot of women started gathering together and building some powerful businesses. Like we have one in Sa, in the region of Sa, who they started by making how to say a pepper. It's a pepper, not pima.
Where's pepper? Yeah.
So
chili,
they started
I
by
think,
making chili pepper. So now with the multifunctional center, they are able to produce enough to serve neighboring regions. They don't only sell in the local community. They're able now to sell to other regions of the country. They can now export the things, and we have also started working with an NGO in Burkina, and they can, by this network, extend the business. So that approach allowed them to focus more on what they're doing instead, and they have a place where you can do it. You have the machines, you have everything, you have the framework is already set. So it encourages you to do more to make it succeed than if you are just strengthened and given tools and then abandoned.
So what I see from both you and Rhoda is like also this idea of like long-term, like not assistance, but like accompanying women in their own business adventures or other things to like build their own wealth, but like also like something that structures it, that helps them and kind of gives them the direction that they're not left without any support at some point, but like to set things up that they need maybe some education or some financial support, that this would be like one of the things I think both of you stress, which I think is a very important part, also because sometimes projects come in, they have a few years and then there's no more support. So I think this long-term thinking is also super important to really create change in a way. I think we have from the panel discussion like a bit more time left, so I would like to kind of to round this up, ask you one last question to all of you. Please again feel free to jump in. Also, if you find what your panelists are saying interesting, please feel free to comment if you're a panelist. And kind of like one last question that I have is like, how do you envision like an inclusive and sustainable WEF future? Like, what is the #1 thing you think needs to change to get there? Big question, I'm sorry.
Okay, so if I may go first, so the one thing that I would like to see for an inclusive future is having inclusive policies that are tied to financial with budgets for implementation, and yeah, I also like inclusive inclusive policies that are not necessarily ticking the box as we've said, but addressing the root causes of inequalities across the water, energy, and food systems.
Yes, for sure. I think that's the first thing we need. We need policy changes. We need systemic changes. We need actors to play a part in it. We need them to even if they enforce it. I don't know how. I don't really know how they because we need a change in mentality. We need people to understand that women play a great part in this nexus, and that they should be integrated in their voice has to be heard.
Yeah, maybe I want to just echo what both Joyce and Jules have said, because I think it comes down to women being truly valued and women's participation and input being truly valued as something that society needs, communities need, business needs. And, I think, as Jules just said, it's something where it's a mindset shift, but it comes from both a sort of supply and demand side. So supporting women to be able to take in certain functions and being able to be empowered, and then also supporting those that need to be able to think differently, not doing this from a social responsibility perspective, but because it is valuable, it is essential, and society cannot perform as well without it. I think that is a true messaging. And I would say often we find that in our development world and development programs, we're not entering with that message. That's not where we're starting. We're starting with, you need to integrate women because they're not enough in here, and you need to do good, and this is the social reason. But we're not coming with the true value that society cannot function as well without more diverse voices, more diverse expertise, and more diverse thoughts to solve problems, to be innovative, etc. So I think starting with that as the central message and continuing that throughout is fundamental.
Definitely. I think I also appreciated this aspect of not only promoting the value from like that women have, but also I think this aspect that you also just mentioned, Margie, that quite often when people come from the outside and they tell you to do something, it doesn't entice you necessarily to follow it, because you think it's something that maybe people want to indoctrinate you with, or something that they want to impose on you. But to really explain, and I think also what Jules had in his example, like trying to go to traditional leaders and this kind of things, and kind of showing that women have always contributed to society, that women have always been important actors in society, and kind of highlighting this aspect. And then there's also something that is not coming necessarily from the outside, but that has been historically there. I think is also really, really important. I think it's a really interesting conclusion that we have.
If I may add something. Of course. About what you said about not enforcing them, because like here in Mali, there's the law that's been adopted saying that in case of elections, every electoral list have to have a 70-30 parity of either gender. If it's 70% women or 30% men, or 30% male and 70% 70% male and 30% female. And people have been abusing the law, because the law has been set to just to include women because they want to include women. And people are abusing it by including women that are not adding anything, who they know are not going to be chosen, who they know are not going to be selected, because they don't do much. They don't have a voice. They can't add anything to the party. But they hide those women because they have to follow the law. So we have to, like you said, it's about understanding, not enforcing.
So if I understood correctly your example, it's like women are elected, or they're on the panel, but they don't have actual decision-making power. Is that what you were saying?
No, it's like when you have to put out the electoral list, you have to put the candidates up for any. Yes, and people select one candidate to be the electoral representative, the one who will go to the elections. But they have to include women in those lists.
Okay.
So since they have to, it's not like they want to. So they choose the least capable women.
Okay.
And they put their name on the list just for because of the law. The law said put 30% women, so they put 30% women. They choose the least capable women they can find. They put them on the list, and they go to the election with that. So that's why I was saying it's not about enforcing, because if you enforce the thing, people will always find a way to go around it.
So in the end, it's not necessarily women that get elected, it's just they're on the list and the men continue to be elected, if I correctly understood.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's
I see.
exactly.
Smart trick. Rhoda, you want to say something?
Thank you. Yes, Jules has excited me about one of my pet topics on 30%, 70% mandatory gender law in electioneering. It is the same in Kenya. But what we say here is that despite that rule being there, they do not elect them. So what ends up happening, the law then requires the parties to mandatorily fill, but here you're saying they put the least effective or qualified one. So for us, the task is this. If you have to normalize the number using a force, that means you have to incur a higher tax amount to pay this affirmative action, which had you elected the woman, then you would not have had to pay. We had calculation, I think, in the last electioneering year in Taita Taveta County, and we came up with a figure of about 100 million per budget year that is just wasted because of compliance. So we're trying to sensitize the communities to save this money so that it goes to development by actually choosing, as opposed to having the parties having to mandatorily fill up those posts. So this was just a comment on Jill's input. I need to put in something about what I envisage as a sustainable WEF future. I'm happy about what my colleague panelists have said about policy change and the genuine support for that policy, together with all the structures that take care of enforcement and everything. But I also wanted to add that like how the mobile telephone became a standard thing everywhere, including the rural places. So I was thinking in terms of the energy and funding the source of fuel for access of the water to the communities. Africa is well endowed with solar, but you do find that the penetration is quite low, and other green energy sources. So my take would be, for me, a sustainable one would be if we take care of both the storage of the runoff water to the oceans and also then use more available technologies, then we could inbuild, probably Joyce Jelagat from IGAD can assist with this in terms of now governmental entries. For we have the building code, for example, in Kenya that forces everybody to do, I think, a solar compatible building. But where is the enforcement and what happens if it doesn't happen? So we end up, like for the utilities with whom we work, water utilities, they are almost insolvent because the amount they use for energy is untenable since they pay very crazy electricity bills. So for me, a sustainable WEF future has huge penetration of giving energy to the communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think it's also a very good point to bring it back to the resources that we have been also talking about, but that they need to be accessible as well. So there's also some, of course, some technical assistance or material assistance needed to improve the situation for sure. So I think we are, so thank you so much for this really interesting discussion, but I wanted to open the floor now to our audience. So I saw quite a few hands. I'm sorry if I didn't pick you, but we wanted to finish the panel discussion first. So if you still have your question, please be free to raise your hand, or if you're a bit shy, don't worry, you can write your question in the chat and I will read it out so the panelists can reply to or respond to your question. I will check if there has been already I think there was quite some vivid discussion going on in the chat already, but I will see if I see some other questions. I think there was a question from Mayaya before. If you want to still ask your question.
Yes, I think it was not a question. It was a comment on how to empower women, in particular in rural areas. Is that for us, we are training them on sustainable beekeeping and on regenerative agriculture. The only thing is to make sure that we really work with them hand in hand, because most of women in rural area are just lacking connection, and I think also on issues of accompaniment, because they can do a lot of things, but they need to a little bit accompaniment so that they can go step by step to achieve what is really intended to be. Another thing is that on issues of microfinance institutions is that they are using women as weak clients who can even, once they fail to pay their maybe loans, they can even take their properties. That's a very bad experience I have been witnessing in my communities. Most of lending institutions are focusing women. Not only that, they want to empower them. The only thing they do is that, the only thing they target is that women are weak. So
yeah,
that
I think the microcrediting question is quite interesting. I think maybe we can ask this to the panelists if they have any input on this as well, about the problem of microcredits, and if this can lead to like dispossession of women. If one of the panelists maybe has a comment on this as well, and then I will go to I think we have 2 more questions, and then I think we can go to them. Does one of the panelists have any experience with this issue or an opinion?
I mean, and part of it came from a point that I'd made about what we were finding in northwest Iraq, where women are saying that during shocks and crisis times, they're getting more access to finance than at times when that's not happening. And I appreciate it. And then sort of MFIs are reverting back to focusing on men, and interesting whether that's the donor focus, and also what Mayaya was saying about kind of wanting to be able to fail and be able to take properties back. I think there was a movement at one stage of a real focus on microfinance and microfinance institutions. I think that the development market has realized that maybe that's something that needs to be counterbalanced with quite a few other initiatives and thinking. And so fortunately, there's not as, I think that the sort of upsurge about 20 years ago around microfinance is something that we've learned a little bit about. But in some areas, I do think there's a lot of, just because something is a microfinance institution doesn't mean that it's necessarily always looking out for in the good space. And maybe I'll add one last point, because it links to the question that I think it was Naf asked about improved GECOs and firewood, and also links to what Mayaya was saying about beekeeping training and accompaniment. What we often seeing is that if an entity is doing training, whether it's a microfinance institution that's providing finance, for example, for a particular type of GECO or cooking stove, or whether it's or whether it's a development organization that's providing training around something, that it often gives people a lot of hope. And so women will often use resources to spend their time and their money to get trained or to even access a particular product, because they believe that the institution has done the research and knows what's happening in that space, and that means they're going to have an income. And what we've often found is that that's unfortunately not the case, because often people are being trained in something that is so disconnected to the market, or something in the market shifts. So maybe people don't want big, large green beans, and they want the small green beans for export or for the local supermarket, or they want something produced in a different way. So the characteristics or the kind of quality that is wanted is not immediately fed through those training programs. And so what we found is that if you've got accompaniment centers, like Jules mentioned, or if you've got the training that's happened, as several Rhoda and others mentioned, then connecting that very closely to the market, to the private sector, to whoever it is, to be able to say, how do we continually be able to adapt really quickly with the machinery that's needed, the technology that's needed, and I think that's the key piece.
If I may add to what Maggie just said about market shifts, we worked with people in north of Mali, where most people are, how do you say, shepherds. They're shepherds. So they like to have herds, they like to have cattle. And when we asked them what they wanted to do about economically, they said they want sheep, they want cows, they want stuff like that. And what happened is that because of the situation in north of Mali, most of the people who received sheep and cattle got stolen. All of them got stolen. But and some of them even died. They were assassinated for what they had, because we thought it was the best thing to do, to give them what they wanted, because that's what they wanted. That's what they know how to do. But because of the security, because of the situation happening over there, it wasn't the best choice. Because those who we worked with, and we went with Market Garden, the activity is still working right now. They didn't suffer the same loss as those who wanted cattle. And this is something, it's unpredictable, but you have to do a better analysis of the market to avoid such things happening.
Definitely. Any other comments on this question? Otherwise, I think, Marshall, you have a question?
No, thanks. I just wanted to give an input. Thanks for all the panelists, and thanks for the opportunity. My name is Marshall, so I'm also based in Cape Town. I think all the situations when we look from place to place differs. I think what I've discovered, our young people or our ladies or women this side, the opportunities are kind of much different this side. When you look to what the panelists were speaking about, the cattle and stuff. I wanted also to elaborate on something that is very crucial, because I'm doing training this side, and this is my emphasis that I'm also pushing. Yes, we are being reminded that we have to do women empowerment, which is very crucial, very important. I always come with the philosophy that Adam was never on its own. It was always Adam and Eve. So it's a joint venture. But what I want to get to is that when I speak to the young people that I train, I always remind them that, it's easy to give someone a car. But if you don't properly train him in terms of the consequences of a car, of having a car, because it's nice having a car, but do we understand what's the consequences? Because when a car makes an accident, are you able to repair it? Are you able to fix a car? And those are some of the things that I think we need to teach, not just our women, but we need to teach our people in terms of, it's nice to have something, but do we understand the consequences of it? And do we know how to deal with it when something happens? So I'm hearing about the woman that got the cattle, and obviously some of the cattle died or some of the cattle were stolen because of not understanding the risk assessment towards it, or weren't properly geared up to it. So my closing remark is in terms of when we do these women empowerment, or when we do share the opportunities with our women, is to properly gear them, because sometimes we could set them up for failure. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone have another comment on risk assessments and their importance, maybe from their own work? For the panelists, just to give this back. If not, thank you so much for the comment anyway. Oh, Margie, you wanted to say something? Sorry.
No, I mean, I think just the whole risk assessment piece, I think, is really valuable, because I think what I appreciate about what Marshall just said is we as often entities outside of what women are doing, support organizations or projects, we hold a huge responsibility because it's almost as though people believe we're playing a quality assurance role. And often we're not, because as Jules said, we need to do more market research. As Marshall said, we need to be able to share what is the reality. If you don't know how to look after the car, drive the car, then you could be doing harm. The same and get hurt. And the same with being able to actually produce in some ways, or move into a market, or trust that this is something that I need to give up my one livelihood to start a new livelihood. That's what we're often talking about. We often work with, when we're working with organizations to kind of design programs and train teams, we talk about needing to be able to empower communities and women to be able to make decisions about future issues. So as they experience future challenges, how are they more empowered to make a decision around that? Or how are they more empowered to deal with future shocks? Because we often will sell a technology, we sell a particular production, or a particular handicraft, or a particular agricultural area, or something people can move into, or a particular part of a value chain. But we're not actually thinking about what are the linkages that people need, what are the networks they need in place to support them, what is the kind of access to information that they can constantly get to understand what the market needs and what is changing. So as the market shifts, a crisis hits, a shock hits, a stress comes in place, they're actually able to be empowered to have the network to answer questions, have businesses that value their participation, have strong supply networks, have strong distribution networks set up. Because if those aren't in place, and we've kind of sold them as this is the silver bullet around something, then that becomes a challenge, because it's actually decreasing their resilience, not increasing their resilience. And a lot of our resilience frameworks, when we apply those around what projects are doing, what's happening in communities, we see that we're unintentionally actually creating a lower resilience rather than higher.
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly important point that you both and Marshall did. Just to understand, especially as externals coming in, that you sometimes have the opposite effect of what you wanted to do. And I think it's very, very important also for people working in the field to keep this in mind, that our actions also have or can have negative consequences if these things are not kept in mind, for sure. And I think there's one, we have maybe one last question, and then I think we have to close. I think, Lennart, you have your hand up if you still want to ask a question. No, Lennart? I think you're muted. If you're talking, you're muted.
Am I audible now, please?
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for this time. I have been getting a conversation about this the WEF on gender perspective, and I'm also in a few that we have more opportunities to include women and maybe youths in creating them, in making them more of a beneficiaries than just allowing them to be exploited. For example, for me, I work I'm also based in Nairobi, but I'm doing some agriculture back at home. So recently I was doing some potato work, and upon assessing how I will distribute my labor to people who are going to assist me, people were in a few that there is distribution of work in the farm. So you find them that most of the men are proposing that women should be doing more of hard work, but men also prefer doing a lighter one. So I found that these people have to be thought about being fair and also sharing labor in a way that there is no one to be exploited. So I made a decision that in this work in my farm, I have to be very sure that no one will feel that he or she has been exploited. So I ended up taking more women into work, and also after that, I had a discussion with them whereby we get I got to understand them, but I told them that the work in agriculture sector does not have to be more of exploiting people, but to be creating more opportunities for people. So I told them that if in future maybe you get some good place whereby women can be told to participate in planting of traditional vegetables for them to get some money into their pockets directly from their farm rather than going to work for other people. So I left them and told them these opportunities has to be created when the right times come. So those people, I left a mark that these people have to be empowered in a way that they are able to produce what they can, and then also sell at a price that is not exploiting them, rather than going to people who they don't value their time and also their energy in a provision of labor. Thank you so much.
Thanks for this very real life example about the labor divisions that can, or the labor division inequalities that they can happen. And also then, I guess, in the sense of remuneration afterwards. Is anyone who wants to have like a last comment on this shared experience before we close from the panelists? Yes, Joyce.
Yes, so I just wanted to add a point in reference to what he has said. So as we advocate for gender equality and gender inclusion in water, energy, and food security, we need also to involve the men so that they can also be advocates. So for instance, if they were in a position to understand the roles and responsibilities that women have alongside what they do in terms of for at the farm for income, they would also be more open to be able to share or take up the hard chores. So, and looking at even the people that we work together, even within the region, most of the gender experts are women, and therefore it becomes in most cases it becomes a women issue, and it becomes a conversation that we are talking to ourselves instead of a conversation that we should be actually sharing and being like men being also part of the change within our societies. So we need to bring more men on board into these conversations. And thank you very much, Leonard, for what you did in that.
Yes.
Great, thank you so much. I think it's a really good point, and I think also throughout our discussions, the role of men in this is super important. And I think it's nice that we also had so many conversations and really a dialogue, not only women talking to women, but also that we had comments from a lot of men. Julius, of course, also men. So I'm really happy that we had like a very round conversation and dialogue about these issues that we all very much care about, which is very nice. I think Baluku, I think you want to do the closing notes, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, everyone, for making, I think it's a very, very insightful conversation, and especially because we've been having quite a number of webinars coming into this one. I think it's been quite informative, and thank you, everyone, definitely for what has been truly energizing. I like the depth, the diversity, and I think also the very honest engagements, as well as the conversations in the chat, and I think even the closing remarks from Leonard pretty much. So from all the discussions of microfinance and shifting gender dynamics during the crisis, reflection of traditional cultures. I know the gentleman from Mali was talking about this, that already support women's integration, but trying to now make them more mainstream, the contributions that have been made, I think make it very clear that gender equity in the WEF Nexus is not just about representation, but definitely going in depth to also focus on recognition, redistribution, resilience, which I think brings us all full round to why we are having these conversations in the first place. So appreciating conversations about practical solutions, from strengthening women-led associations, connecting them with markets, highlighting the importance of inclusive technologies, like the cook stove that you talked about, that definitely directly impact daily lives. I think these discussions remind us of systems that already are ground in our daily lives and realities, but often left in the background. So the special thanks to our panelists for your insights, your conversations, the attendees in the chat sharing your expertise, sharing your information, asking questions. We do very much appreciate that. I know Timothy has shared in the group chat. If you want to pick a couple of more information, you can check out the One Planet website for more information. And I also wanted to mention that we are excited to share that we are currently growing a stakeholder database that will enable us continue such engagement. So by providing targeted insights, allow stakeholders access to the full suite of the One Planet WEF Nexus toolkits across the entire continent, access to knowledge. So we'll be sharing more details because we already have most of your contact information if you allow us. So when you do see a call to sign up on the database, this is what we're asking for. So please do take time to sign up and be part of this vibrant and growing community of practice across the continent. I do recognize that there's still a lot of work to be done in incorporating gender into what we do daily, but I think we're already on the right path towards this shared objective. So let's carry this momentum forward with collaboration, shared commitment. Please check out the material that we share across different platforms. Join the community of the stakeholders database, as I've mentioned, and we have quite a range of other webinars upcoming up until October. Do take time to check them out. I think there's always definitely insights and opportunities to collaborate with like-minded people across the continent. So on behalf of the AfriLabs team, on behalf of the One Planet consortium of partners, thank you, and see you in our next conversation. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. It was very enjoyable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.